Welcome to Everything Life Coaching, exploring the art, science, and business of coaching with your host, Noelle Cordeaux, CEO of Lumia. Each week, we dive into cutting-edge coaching trends, interview industry experts, and provide practical insights to help you thrive on your coaching journey. Get ready to expand your coaching toolkit and transform lives, including your own.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Life Coaching Podcast. I am Noelle Cordeaux, the host of the Everything Life Coaching Podcast and one of the co-founders of Lumia Coaching, as well as one of the trainers over at Lumia Coaching. And I'm delighted to be with you today. And I have with me one of my dear friends, Paul Chamberlain, who is also an alum of our program and a coach who runs Smart Funny Tortured School, a Shame the Game, and so much more. Paul, thanks so much for joining us. I always appreciate that you're willing to hop on and dice through some heady topics with me. Today, what we're going to talk about is one of the two major trends that are impacting the global marketplace of wellness, and that is the trend of optimization. And the reason that I wanted to bring you in is because of your expertise in this space and the way that you have been yourself working in this way with clients, with folks that you're training all over the world. So why don't you give us a little bit of an intro, share who you are, where you are, and what you do in the world.
Thank you, Noelle. Yes, it is always an honor and an absolute blast to do this with you. Yes, I am an alum of Lumia and a very proud and educated and well-informed coach because of it. So, and I've taken that and adapted what I really wanted to work with and who I really wanted to work with and turned it into Smart Funny Tortured, which is my parent brand. And within that, I have the Smart Funny Tortured podcast and just recently launched Smart Funny Tortured Framework course on the school platform. And then you mentioned Shame the Game, which is a therapeutic tool used by coaches and therapists to kind of use these cards that represent shame and give somebody a narrative for working through their toxic shame, their shame story, their trauma, and gives them a little bit more of a metaphorical narrative foothold instead of talking about it directly. So those are the things that I am doing right now and enjoying a great deal and trying to do it at scale.
Awesome. Awesome. And I get excited about rolling through these topics with you because Paul is one of the people in my life where there are big leaps and jumps in technology. I get text messages from Paul saying, what a time to be alive. We're watching history unfold. And so this is what we're going to hit today. And just to kind of orient everyone to what we're talking about and the influences. So we are looking at major long-term cultural and demographic shifts that are truly going to inevitably change the world of wellness. A lot of this is going to be absolutely no surprise. It's being driven by major crises in human and planetary health. And I promise this podcast will become uplifting as we go on. But what we're going to look at also is the impact of wellness on people beyond the 1% and trends that are truly new, but are not going to be fleeting. And to really hone in on where we're at, usually when we talk about trends, usually when I do trends reports, I report out on 7 to 10, sometimes even 20 things that are really kicking in the marketplace that coaches need to be aware of. But right now in 2025, something incredible has happened. The wellness marketplace has cleaved in two, and we now have two major consumer groups that think, act, and behave very differently. If you tuned into Trends Part 1, you would have heard about an average consumer's desire for a low pressure, less relentlessly self-optimizing, low tech approach to wellness. And today, we're going to talk about where the second half of the marketplace has gone and is going that represents a high-tech, medical, complex, hyper-optimizing, and expensive marketplace. This is exemplified by biohacking and longevity clinics. Longevity clinics were really the first tip off several years ago as to where this trend was going. And I want coaches to understand that there truly is a place for everyone within the world of optimization. And if the world of optimization isn't for you, you have the entire other half of the marketplace to play around with, which is the anti optimization crowd. So, some factors that are impacting consumer behavior. First up, the world is stressful. We're seeing rising climate disasters like the fires in Los Angeles, and globally, people are generally not okay. And wellness is one sector that seems to really be riding out economic volatility because people are looking to provide healing and grounding practices for themselves in the face of uncertainty. And this appears to be one of the major drivers that's impacting the growth of the wellness industry itself, which has reached the height of 6.3 trillion and is expected to grow by 9 trillion is expected to grow to 9 trillion by 2028. Paul, I know that you've done a lot of work in looking at the meta crisis and the way that all of the different factors of our time are influencing people. What are you seeing in terms of the way that consumers, everyday global people, are thinking and behaving and using their money to purchase wellness products?
The biggest thing that I see is the inability of people to put their finger on it, what they're feeling, and I think that that's a great place for coaches to come into. That I've about the last 2 years, like you said, I've been studying the meta crisis and all the things that it used to be called a poly crisis, where we had one problem over here, we had one problem over here on the other side of the planet, we had this, but now all the crises, the meta crisis, are all tied together, and so that creates kind of this aggregate energy that people are feeling, this existential tension that nobody can really put their finger on. It's like, like I say, birds in a tree before an earthquake. It's legitimate. We are creatures who feel energy. We are susceptible to pheromones. We are susceptible to all these things we cannot see that operate at a different level. And so we oftentimes have a client come to you, talking about something that is giving them a great deal of agitation, but it's not related to the thing that, like, yeah, okay, this is what I want to talk about. There's just something else there. So just, going back to the analog, it's just purely acknowledging it. It's like, yes, you're supposed to be feeling this way in light of what we are living through. So take a breath and let's go. But yeah, I mean, short answer to big setup is acknowledgement, is what I've been finding is the most successful thing.
Yeah. And I'm seeing this a lot. So, from time to time, I pick up the phone and I make phone calls to folks who have attended Lumia community events, or just to say hey to folks who have been circling the program for a while. I'm a real person. I like to talk to students. I like to help inspire people. And recently, when I've been making those phone calls or even talking to our students and alumni, the questions that are coming towards me are the big, deep questions of our time. And until you started doing your work around the meta crisis, I didn't have language for it to really understand that there are these things that are churning in the background that are creating fear, uncertainty, and just an overall sense of being ill at ease. I think part of it too for folks is that we live in a time where we have unprecedented access to information, where we're not just going through our daily lives in our regional areas, seeing the people that we see, where we're constantly having almost, a fire hose of information fired at us constantly. That's oftentimes set up as clickbait to get us to stay engaged on our devices or wherever we happen to be placing our attention. And this is scaring the, the Jesus out of people. And so I think on both sides, we're seeing a lot of people acting from a place of fear. And you know as well as I do that when people act from a place of fear, they're engaged in their limbic emotional brain. They're not engaged in their logical brain. So as someone who consumes a lot of information, what tips can you give to individuals and coaches around how to really be discerning about what you take in and how you might want to be thinking about everything that's available to us in our time?
It's actually two different things. One is to center oneself in the fact that with everything going on around us, that the two most important thing that we need to focus on and build towards and kind of exercise this muscle is everything around our shared humanity and our individual humanity, and then our set of values. And the value set is really the thing that is beginning to, that codifies us, that brings us together. And then from there, it's like, okay, what's really, where do you get your information? How do you consume it? Healthier practices by sleeping with your phone in the other room. I mean, just these little micro habits that begin to bring down the temperature a little bit, but always circling back to, and that's one of the things in Smart, Funny, Tortured, is that what we are doing is reinforcing your innate talents that are maybe don't rely on accreditation or certification or education, but are your innate talents and strengths and intelligence to, bolster and really illuminate your humanity. And I found when I'm saying like, look, the only thing, knowledge is going to be free. Automation is going to be a part of our lives where we are going to have robots washing our dishes in 5 years. So the humanity side is paramount to develop, to embrace, and be, there's so many things that are popping up that are showing that. And, I don't want to keep going on about it, but it's such a great factoid, is the Onion magazine. Fantastic, satirical, American institution that's been around for over 30 years. They just started issuing a print version again, and they have 55,000 subscriptions. Gen Z and Gen X have shown almost a hockey stick in adoption of physical books and visceral, tactile things that you can hold, that you can read, that you can cherish. And I really think that's a fantastic bellwether for like trends and where we're going as people, to where it's going to be about shared community, shared values, and shared experiences.
I love that. I love that. And thinking about coaching people who are coaches, want to become coaches, are thinking about this discipline, that is one of the core concepts that we're trained on, is how to help people identify their innate strengths, how to help people identify their innate values, and then shape their goal sets based on the application of those strengths and values. So what you're saying is right in line with the discipline of coaching. And I've been using the term social first responder for a couple of years
Yeah,
now.
I love that. Yeah.
This is who we are. This is who we are as coaches. This is the future of this discipline. So as we're thinking about this, and we're looking at this market that's really cleaved into the anti-optimization and the optimization piece, one of the things that we have to get into is that longevity is one of the things that's really pushing this trend towards optimization. And this trend was not born in a vacuum, and it's going to continue to grow and morph alongside of our relationship with wellness that will continue to evolve. So I'd love your perspective on it, but I want to give you a setup for this. So 2020, pandemic happened. Everyone was at home behind their screens, behind their computers, looking out into the world. And from a collective perspective, there was a reckoning that all of the systems, whether it's a healthcare system, an educational system, a banking system, they are not going to be there to save us. And so, en masse, from a global perspective, there was a lightning bolt awakening that folks needed to take their health into their own hands. And you are someone who I have seen personally embrace the longevity trend, utilizing lots of different modalities and lots of different ways to access information. What has your experience been like being one of the people who is embodying this trend in a large way?
I think the catalyst for me was receiving some very serious diagnoses during COVID and after, and realizing how strained and how just I don't want to say ineffective because that's that's pejorative for the medical industry that is trying so hard, but the inability for it to scale and the inability for it to meet my needs. And so that caused me to go elsewhere and to investigate other modalities and things like that. And concurrently, that is when the advent of AI and, some hardcore futurists and things were starting to come up. And you started hearing things like, just stay alive for another 10 years and, we'll have aging knocked. And, 3 years ago, that was science fiction and it was clickbait and it was stuff that you would end up seeing on a Joe Rogan podcast. But now with the protein folding and so many of these other things that are being done by AI and by technology augmented, it's starting to click with a lot of people going, oh, wait a minute, I need to get my act together because I could be around a lot longer than I think. And I truly believe we're on the precipice of about in the next 2 years of starting to see some major illnesses and diseases getting knocked off. And bespoke medicine and things like that are coming up. So in light of what's going on around us right now, there's also this overwhelming sense of optimism in the wellness space, in the longevity space, and also in the space of like, I may not be doing the same job I'm doing right now. So what do I want to do if I got another 40 years left, if I've got another 50 years left? And so this mindset to catch people and to be that voice. And once again, it's acknowledgement. It's a recognize. It's like, yeah, it could be pretty awesome, huh? What do you want to do? You certainly don't want to be behind the desk you're in right now. You don't want to be in that cubicle. What do you want to do? Let's do it because you might have 40 years left. And that's a really exciting thing, especially amongst Gen Xers, especially amongst late millennials, people that, thought that they just had to stick it out for another 20 years and retire. But no, you could be vibrant. I mean, 80 is going to be the new 55, 60. I mean, honestly, if people follow just some very simple things and if technology catches up with it, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for time.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I'd really like people to walk away with from listening to us today is oftentimes, especially in the world of coaching, there's tended to be a real divide. If you're a wellness person, if you're a fitness person, if you're a nutritionist, if you're a health coach, you're almost siloed in the roles that you can hold. And what we're starting to see with everything that you're describing is the sheer accessibility of health data and the global awareness of the importance of building muscle mobility, healthy aging options that are available to us. And so coaches have the opportunity and are in real time becoming socio-emotional guides through new terrain, through uncharted territory, through landscapes that none of us have traversed before, while the client is the one that is harnessing their health. The client is the one that is bringing the interest set to the fore. And so I think we're going to see a lot of the different silos, breaking down in terms of what it means to be a coach. I know that you're very educated in the optimization space, in the health space, but it's fascinating to me that the work that you do is truly centered around values, your life, your joy, your passion, your innate skills. And I might posit that is all foundational from the human ecosystem experience of what health actually is. What's your take?
It is, because I mean, it just simply comes down to it's a holistic experience. Um, and as you were saying that, I was thinking about that yes, now you can get your lab results from LabCorp or Quest Diagnostics sent to a portal, and you can download everything and you can upload it to ChatGPT. And you can get interpretation of that. And that's where the danger rests, because you're getting the information before you're getting it to your doctor. You're getting it before it can be truly interpreted. And there exists somebody in, there's a couple of classifications that exist that are like advocates, and those are doulas. And they hold the hand. They have seen a lot, and they can be that go between. It's like, okay, you don't have your appointment till next Tuesday. Okay, let's take a breath, and just be that, like, let's work with what you're feeling right now, because you're never going to get that. I mean, one of the things that I said, and again, I don't want it to come off too difficult, but your doctor for right now is a mechanic. You don't go to your mechanic about a car problem and talk to them about, okay, well, this happened and I'd really like to say, no, they just want to fix it. So if you can, put your doctor in that space, but yet be talking to somebody who has a holistic understanding of the whole experience that you're going through, the anxiety, the questions, and okay, I stayed up to 2 a.m. on Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude and went through my stuff, and now I have more information than I thought, or I'm a little bit more freaked out. And if you had somebody that, that if you had a doula, if you had an advocate, if you had a coach that could take in wellness, could take in, the skills that we were taught by Lumina, all those things, and help somebody process it, that's immensely valuable. And it goes to my other work that I do in crisis advocacy. I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a therapist, but I am a crisis advocate. I can get you to a point of safety and then go, okay, now these are the resources that we need to pursue so you can get fully healthy. But just somebody to hold open the door so that they can walk through is really, I think, the job in this age of the meta crisis, in this job of this technological disruption, in these spaces, is to be an advocate, a life doula for what's happening.
It's true. It's true. And so I've seen in my career, in my beautiful blossoming and young career, I'm always 5 years too early. 5 years ago, I was working on a concept that's almost exactly what you described, that's designed for women, mostly single women who have breast cancer. And exactly as you described, your doctor is a mechanic. When you're dealing with some type of diagnoses, whether it's pre-diagnoses, diagnoses, post, or all the way through end of life, you have to go to lots of different doctors. You have to go to lots of different specialists, and none of those specialists have all the information. And so one of the best practices right now is for folks to build a binder with their entire medical history so that they can carry all of their test results, everything from appointment to appointment, in order to allow the full picture to be obtained. I'm starting to see this trend come to life inside of hospital systems. This is one of the major developments in coaching in healthcare, because there are not enough doctors, nurse practitioners, social workers, caseworkers to care for the patient population at this time. And so what we're seeing is coaches being employed to do exactly as you're describing, work with the families, work with the patient, work with the doctors on their communication and their grief, work with the care team to figure out, well, what's happened, with the relapse. And so people are being embedded inside the lives of individuals in very acute situations to serve as coaches.
That's fantastic. I mean, that needs to happen at scale. And I mean, and once again, it goes back to the very beginning of the conversation. It's illness. I mean, it's acknowledgement. After my diagnoses, it was determined that I had what's called illness anxiety disorder. And so many people who survive cancer come out the other side and life is never the same again. You are worried that every time you step out of the shower or every time you go have blood drawn, something's going to go south. And so to have somebody embedded in your life that acknowledges that it is not hypochondria, it is not you being, too much. It is these things that you have illness, anxiety disorder. Okay, we know that. Let's move, let's now work from that positioning. And so to have somebody acknowledge that and recognize it and say, yeah, you're supposed to after what you went through, and then be able to, for somebody to be there after you've been on hold for an hour and a half and say, I just went through this. It's like, okay, let's, as you said, let's go back to our file. Let's go back. Who can we call now? What can we do? God, I mean, I've always toyed with the idea of, going into coaching around illness, anxiety disorder, because there's so much of a need for it. But man, it's a niche, and it's one that is tremendously underserved and doesn't even exist for the most part.
It's very real. I have people in my life, cancer survivors, who I recognize what you're saying in the lived experience of people that I love. Um, and even, thinking about, okay, so thinking of the skill set and the mindset of the coach practitioner who could step into these spaces that are being developed in real time and evolving in real time. That person needs to have presence. They need to have a clear mind. They need to have emotional regulation. They need to be holding the story of the client. They need to be understanding the social dynamics, the professional dynamics, the family dynamics. They also need to be able to know and understand the doctors, the nurses, who are the people in this person's life. Nothing that I'm describing requires a medical background. It requires a coaching background in order to work with the human skills and the human emotions.
And here's the other thing that you cannot pay. There's no amount of currency that could ever get it for you. If all of those elements that you named off resonate with you and you have lived experience, that's the thing that you can't buy. If you're, once it settled into me that the reason that I was doing this was for one person who I hadn't met yet, who may go through the same thing in 5 years. It's like, okay, all right, then that's the reason that I'm doing that. So, a new coach or somebody looking for a niche, it's, if you have experience such as that, or even on the flip side of helping somebody recover, helping somebody, find peace, helping, there's one coach that I know that does, body work and sound therapy, and has synthesized these things together. And a lot of the people are convalescing or surviving, recovering, and things like that. So, there's multiple places to slot in with your own personal experience if this is a particular thing that resonates with you.
Absolutely. All right. So let's toss in a market prediction from the Global Wellness Institute. And that is that proactive health culture fueled by global health crises and aging populations is going to become a global priority. There is a new term that is being coined, and that is self-health. Gone are the days of self-help, and we have now entered the world of self-health. According to McKinsey, 82% of US consumers now consider wellness a top or important priority in their lives. So this is something that's not going anywhere.
No, it is. I'm actually having this conversation later this week with somebody for my podcast on literally, we have never lived in a time where we as an individual have more agency to pursue information, to pursue, financial security, to do all these different things. It is really, it's the age of agency where we can do things on our own and for ourselves. And that is also, seeking community as well.
And indeed, so agency, health, seeking community, Gen Z is really driving this. 60% of Gen Z now prioritize a healthy lifestyle over money, career, and personal enjoyment. That is a major statistic, a major statistic. So, all right, with any kind of emergent trend, people are going to need and they're going to want guides to take them out into the world through this brave new world. We've touched on the healthcare aspect of things, but we're also seeing a trend towards over the counter, off the shelf consumer technologies and a growing trend towards out of clinic care. If we're in this space, how can people differentiate between snake oil and what's real? And if we're coaches who are working in this space, where can we go for information about what is available to our clients?
That's a really good question. It's one that I wrestle with a great deal because there are multiple sources. The tools available to us for getting information are becoming there's less hallucination in the answers that you get if you are using an LLM. Um, but a lot of times it's information overload. Is that people will, you can't just go to ChatGPT and type in, a 2 sentence prompt in deep research and get a 36-page PDF and run with that. That's that's anathema. You cannot do that. That is a starting place. That is your first day of school. If you are truly pursuing something. So it goes back to what I said is that the coaches have to employ a great deal of agency too. Um, there's a guy on YouTube that literally prints out that literally you can tell. And I mean, I even had even had AI look at the transcript of the video on YouTube, and he merely does just that, goes and does deep research on a topic like how not to procrastinate. And it's split screen, and he's literally reading it. And it's so offensive academically, it's so offensive from so many standpoints because it's just a regurgitation of information that hasn't been parsed, that hasn't been, you know, integrated with somebody's personal experience, with their perspective, with training or anything like that. So all the tools are available and they're fantastic and they're built to augment you, but they're not meant to provide information that you just pass along.
Yeah, I say often, and I'm going to stand by it with this conversation that the most powerful stance that a coach can hold is I know nothing. And really coming from a perspective of ICF core competencies centering the client, as coaches, we can say very authentically and honestly to a client in front of us, I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. But I am going to be with you as we figure this out together. And one of the great benefits of coaching is that two heads are better than one. And so, two folks, one who's scared shitless and the other who's holding a non judgmental stance without agenda, can come together and get a little bit of equilibrium in the process. And that's where I think that coaches can be really valuable in our time is harnessing that emotional detachment to the outcome, is harnessing that non-judgmental stance that we are so expertly trained to do so that somebody else can have their lived experience.
I want to ask you, and what you just described, and what is the most important thing in crisis advocacy, and now I'm starting to realize it's the most important thing for me when I'm interacting in coaching is not only providing that, but it all comes down to providing emotional safety. You can say, I don't know, but we got this. All right, we're going to, let's lock our arms and we can, let's figure this out. And then also imbuing confidence in that emotional safety. there's a difference by saying, I don't know. And you're like, oh shit, we're both up, both up the creek without a paddle. But there's a difference between saying, I don't know, but you're emotionally safe. We're going to figure this out. Let's go. And that has seems to be a cornerstone right now in coaching, is just providing emotional safety.
It is. And also truly holding curiosity and getting in there, because I'm thinking of a client exchange that I had last night. One of my clients texted me at close to 8 p.m., said, "Hey, I have a situation. Do you have a half hour?" And I did. Now, the situation at hand is a really high level pressure cooker at a C-suite level in a very high stakes organization that I objectively know nothing about. So this is one of those times when literally I, Noelle, can say, I know nothing. I can't say I have the answer or the right answer, but I know my client and I'm really smart. And so I was able to listen to my client, understand the problem, ask my client a bunch of questions about what was going on, and then lay it out and say, is this what I'm understanding? And from that foundation, the two of us were able to come to a solution set that felt really good to the client. Now, my client actually had all the information. What the value was in that conversation is when somebody's stressed out and they're scattered and all of their marbles are rolling everywhere, and you have somebody else to say, hey, I'm chill, I'm smart, I can sit with you, and let's pick up each of these marbles and put them back in the bag and see if we can make sense of this bag together. That's why it works. That's where it works, and that's how it works. I have another piece of that related to the optimization front, and that is a piece of client mindset, where in health, in optimization, in thinking about the fact that 60% of Gen Z are more concerned about their health than they are career and enjoyment, right? This is a big deal with capital B. What we're seeing is that coaching clients are increasingly interested in approaching health as a web of interconnected elements: psychological, emotional, mental, spiritual, and beyond, that influence one another. And so that's another piece of this that the coach holds. If you know your human, if you know your client, and you as the coach hold their physiological reality, their emotional reality, their mental reality, and their spiritual needs and yearnings, you can help with the values anchored as that center, help somebody move through life in a way that brings life into view in the way they want it.
I mean, I was just kind of earlier, I was chuckling. I'm like, okay, we figured it out. It's just to be curious, to listen, to provide emotional safety, and to build confidence between the two of you and the discourse that you get going. It's like, okay, that's pretty much it.
It is. It is. And now and let's talk about that,
Yeah.
because saying it sounds so simple.
It does, yeah.
Sounds so simple. And I've been practicing as a coach practitioner for 18 years. It has taken me 18 years in order to develop a skill set where my emotional regulation is on lock, my intuition in session is on point, and I have built myself to a level of confidence where I know I'm damn smart, and I can sit with somebody and pull my smarts out in service of them. And that's also what coach training does. Human beings don't have the innate ability to evoke social leadership right now. I remember you and I were sitting doing research maybe 6 months ago, and we were looking at the World Economic Forum's top skill sets that can't be beat by AI. And it was all about social leadership, how you connect with other people, how you inspire other people, how you lead other people, how you foster resilience within communities. And there is such a small percentage of the population that actually knows how to do that and has skills in how to do that. And that's what's in coach training.
That reminds me of another factoid that I heard this morning, that the hiring industry is completely cratered because you have this tsunami of perfectly constructed resumes that AI has built for people, and you have these perfectly tailored LinkedIn profiles that so hiring managers can no longer discern, and AIs can no longer discern who that is. So now there has been this callback, this snapback rather, to bringing in candidates in person to see first and foremost how they interact in social situations, whether they can, hold a conversation, whether they exude certain capabilities and, instincts and all these things that can contribute to leadership or being a cohesive member of a team. And that is, the kind of the hiring mantra now, if you want to get hired, is don't be an a-hole. It's like, because people are not looking for the smartest guy who's difficult and abrasive, but boy, he brings us. No, it's fine. We'll make do without that guy as long as we have an effective, cohesive team.
Yes. And, to your point, being able to get along with others is one of the skills that is atrophying right now. And I want to bring up some risks that are implicit in tech adaptation with wearable devices, with AI contributing to brain rot and the breakdown of neural pathways. We're also seeing a huge influx in the market of optimization of wearable devices. And it's not just wearable devices like steps trackers that we all know and love, but devices that monitor sleep, acupuncture, sex, journaling, and more recently, the effects on the brain of ketamine, LSD, and psilocybin. So, as humans become more reliant on data that they're getting, we're also breaking down our ability to move independently through the world. And it's this double edged sword where this data can really help us. But if that's all we're relying on, we lose our own ability to move through the world as sentient beings.
And we lose autonomy. And once again, use the word agency. I got rid of my Aura Ring because I was getting anxious because I was waking up in the morning and and seeing that my sleep was not optimal. And so I was going to bed the next night going, okay, and here we go, and sleep and do this. And it was like, okay, how about I just not eat 2 hours before bed, no devices, read before I go to bed, and try to get in bed by 9. Okay, then everything's going to be, so we stop, we lose the ability. We're handing so much over. That's the whole thing. We're handing our agency over to devices and functionalities that are now endemic in our life and ubiquitous. So that's another thing that I have also coached on is getting devices, getting tech, getting back to these micro habits. I had a CEO where it was literally 2 weeks of sessions going, get your iPad out of the bedroom and you're going to do a 30-second cold shower. That was major. That constituted the majority of, our coaching block. But on the other side of it, he noticed he was sleeping better. And, it was just these little, there's so much that you can do now that devices and technology has replaced that we thought make it better for us, that when you pull it out, it's like, oh, wait a minute. It's literally like buying yourself flowers. It's like, God, why don't I do this every week? This is nice. This is a good thing. And that's really what, selectively pulling out tech that has seeped in can do.
Yeah. And again, we stumbled on another core aspect of coaching, which is habits and pattern formation. This is back to basics is the way for coaches to approach optimization. What are your habits? What are your bad habits? What are your good habits? What are the patterns? How are they impacting you? And building trust and safety, professional relationships for strategy. This is the core of what coaching is.
We're so fixated, especially in coaching, that we need to be coaches to help somebody deal with addiction or some kind of life-altering condition, when in fact the majority of people just need somebody to be there going, "Yeah, no, you don't need to get the iPad out of the bedroom. Amazing how good you'll feel about this," or "Try this. You're fascinated and you're curious about cold plunge, sauna, doing a different type of, taking something out of your diet. Okay, fine. That's our new goal. We will talk about that. We'll just, it is micro habits that make the most massive change, not to make it cliche. But yeah, you don't need to be an addiction coach or a relationship coach or a breakup coach. You can be a micro habits coach and move mountains.
Oh, yeah. Indeed. Indeed. All right. So, speaking of micro habits, I want to introduce a topic that I know is near and dear to your heart and passion set. And it's housed in a term that you may not be familiar with, which is metabolic psychiatry.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, let's
and
let's go.
let's go.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm
So,
ready for this one. Boy,
I
if the
know you
listeners only knew my backstory. All right.
Oh, I know. I know. So, metabolic psychiatry. This is an emerging field that examines the intricate relationship between metabolic health and mental well being, focusing specifically on interventions that target the gut brain axis. Studies indicate that gut bacteria are linked to mental health, depression, anxiety, and this is one of the pieces of the human puzzle that is on the forefront of a really major paradigm shift for society. And coaches are working in this space around micro habits and nutrition plans. And my understanding is that there's a lot of experimentation in the way that microbiome based diagnostics and plans can impact folks because people are really different. So, as much as you'd like to share about your own story and as much as you could shed on, what you see in this space, because I know you've lived it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I suffered from depression for 10 years. And in that time, I was taking SSRIs, and then I was also taking red wine every night. Not a good combo. Um, and you just think about, and then later on, I was diagnosed with a pancreatic cyst, of which I just received medication, prescription medication from the doctor, no nutritional guidance, nothing ever talked about the gut brain axis. No, nobody has ever put those together in a formal medical environment. There are very exclusive and elite medical environments in major metropolis like New York and LA that this is becoming a very pronounced theme. And you can't, but it comes at a very high ticket cost. So with those limiters, I had to find my own way out of it. And so through some other modalities, but then when I realized how important it was to heal my gut and how I felt as a result of that, and then also learning how, and I mean, this can, right now you can go, you talk about the metabolic psychiatry, a lot of people are like, well, if you just, mind over matter, this kind of thing. No, I try to get across the idea going, if you go to your therapist or if you see your coach on a Wednesday and that night you go out and you have a couple of glasses of wine and mud pie with your friends, you've literally wiped that whiteboard clean of the work that you've done before. That's how fragile um, that situation is. And healing your gut is actually fairly easy. The hard part is consistency. And the hard part is getting yourself to realize that, oh, the only downside is that when you finally do heal your gut, when you do step off the wagon, it's brutal. Your body immediately revolts. Um, and, but it truly is probably the strongest preventative medicine move that you can make. And if you integrate it into coaching or therapy or any other kind of treatment protocol, if that is first line, oh, I mean, it is so powerful. And if you integrate it with other modalities such as hormetic stress, like cold plunge or sauna, where you're talking about things like heat shock proteins and thermogenesis, and um, you know, I'm a living example of feeling like I was on an island, that I was by myself, that I needed to find my answers. So the only thing accessible to me was what I put in my body and how I treated my body. That was the only thing I could do that gave me a feeling of power. And back to the whole thing, a feeling of agency. It wasn't like just sitting for 2 weeks before the next doctor's appointment. It's like, oh, I can do this. So yes, I am very passionate about it. And if that is something that somebody has personally experienced, um, it should be a part. That level of gut health and that level of respecting the gut-brain axis, and I know this is a blanket statement, should be the part of everybody's coaching. It should it's hard to do. You're not going to get a client who's going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll clean out my pantry. No, but it should be in the back of your head going, yeah, if you're taking out a bag of Skittles and you're still feeling like shit, um, th- and it's not just because it's a sugar. It's because there's titanium dioxide in it. There's all these things. And I do not want to stray into a very politically sensitive area about additives and food and things like this, which is a very political hot topic button right now. But just whole foods, cut down on the alcohol, start treating your gut and properly. And but yes, the optimization that is coming in that area is yeah, you set me off. You lit my fuse. There you go. Hi everybody. You just you just heard the whole thing. But it is probably the most important thing for healing.
Yeah. And so, and I think it's important to acknowledge, like, we live in a time where politically charged hot button issues are steamrolling us every couple weeks. There's something new. And so, as coaches, what we need to hold is that we're part of the wellness industry. We have an ethical code that we abide by in order to hold a non-judgmental stance about the person in front of us, and to put our own, feelings aside in service of that person.
I just wanted to add one more thing to that. And this is for everybody who, you can come to somebody and the coaching relationship ends immediately when you preach or give advice. I mean, that's 101. You do not do that. So you need to stop drinking. That'll heal your gut. No, it's being that advocate for them again. And everything changed for me when I learned that when you drink alcohol, the liver metabolizes it and turns it into acetaldehyde, which is and so, and then when you wear a wearable and you see that night when you stayed out with friends and you took out a bottle of wine, just like, oh, it was a Friday night and did that, and you see your heart rate, your resting heart rate, 20 beats higher than it is when you don't drink. This is where this is where optimization, this is where learning comes in. It's just like, yeah, don't have a few drinks. It's bad for you. But then when you realize acetaldehyde is why you have a hangover, I don't want that in my body. Oh, you just stole a bunch of heartbeats from your life overnight because your heart was beating a little bit faster. It's beginning to put things in perspective like that makes it accessible. That's when things began to change for me, because I knew my health habits had to change. But once I had information that put it in a narrative that I could and I think that that's what coaches can do. It's like, no, I'm not going to scold you. I'm not going to. the last thing I wanted through my health journey was to be admonished.
100%. And, listening to you, I think the most important takeaway is that you were in the seat of the client and there was nothing that anyone could tell you, that you had to be the one to decipher the data for yourself and to decide for yourself what you wanted for your lived existence. It's that back to that agency piece that we're fostering, with our clients, through this. And everyone saw Paul light up when we broached this topic that within this space, you can find the areas that you are absolutely passionate about. Another area that is as specialized as the brain gut access that's really popping right now is psychodermatology. And this is an area that explores how beauty, fashion, skincare, hair care impacts mental health and well-being, utilizing the data and awareness around environmental toxins and the effects on cellular and neurological health. So this is a whole area. I was at an entrepreneurial event over the summer and I met a fellow former corporate sales warrior who is passionate about skincare and who is building not only skincare products, but a skincare coaching business to help people understand the impacts of environmental stressors and lifestyle stressors. So if you're listening to me and you're like, I love that stuff, there's a space for you to follow your passion. And I think what all of these different areas have in common within the optimization trend is the biofeedback loops that are created vis-a-vis the data that we can now generate due to the advances in healthcare. And as coaches, we need common sense, love, patience, compassion, a clear view, a non-judgmental stance, and our skills around patterns, habits.
And every single one of these that you mentioned, there are robust communities all over the place. I mean, from Reddit to Instagram and I mean, that once again is, your discernment of seeing what resonates you, which passes the smell test, what can help your path. But each one of these have incredibly vibrant, learned communities, and this is where the new era of teachers is rising. You see it on YouTube. The thought leaders in so many of these new burgeoning areas are people that you had no idea, you didn't know 3 years ago, and now they are leading the charge on it. There's a mushiness to the stability and the accuracy of information, and that is up to you to make sure. But it is a brave new world, and it is a wonderful place to plant your flag. There's so much available.
So much available. And, alongside of the communities, jobs will follow. Platform after platform is being created for coaches to help decipher and support folks in analyzing this data, joining these communities, and really building what they want to out of life. Paul, it's been such a pleasure chatting. Paul, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, as always. I enjoyed passing this hour. And any last thoughts for folks who are thinking about becoming coaches, getting certified, and moving into these spaces and places?
I really truly believe that this has never been a better time for people to step up and to refine their skills as humans, to help other humans. That is simply it. I mean, it is. You do not have to. I know a lot of people feel that they need to get into the streets and hold banners and hoist flags and speak out, but kindness and compassion and being human in your own community is probably one of the strongest fortifying elements of how we're going to survive these next few years.
Indeed. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. And if you want to have a deeper conversation with me inside Lumia, I absolutely welcome it. And if you're one of the folks who's been Lumia curious for a while and you see a call from a Malibu number, it might be me. So pick up the phone. I'll certainly leave you a voice message and come check out our work if you want to learn more. We'll have some links in the show notes, and we'll see y'all next time. Take good care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If today's episode has inspired you to take the next step in your coaching journey, I invite you to explore what Lumia Coach Training has to offer. Our comprehensive coach training program can help you turn your passion and gifts for helping others into a thriving career. Ready to learn more? Book a no-obligation call with our admissions team today. Just visit lumiacoaching.com/everything and click on the Book a Call button. We'd love to hear your story and show you how Lumia can support your coaching goals. And if you're waiting for a sign to take the next step, this is it.